I'm Khanya Mthethwa. I was born and raised in South Africa, and I currently live in South Africa as well. I studied jewelry design at the University of Johannesburg, and I have a master's in design, currently doing my PhD in history of arts. I work at the University of Johannesburg in the jewelry department, and I have a dedicated workbench there, which is where I primarily do most of my work from. Before I studied jewelry design, I studied diamond cutting and rough stone evaluation, and I worked as a diamond cutter, but then I decided I want to change, because I wanted something more creative, and then I ended up coming to the University of Johannesburg to study jewelry design. So I've always had an interest in art and the different art disciplines. A lot of my work is informed by other disciplines. So you'll find that I integrate photography into my work and a bit of painting, canvases. So I've always just been a creative, and I take inspiration. I draw inspiration from different fields. Umswenko is how we as indigenous people represent ourselves to the world in how we wear our cultural adornments, and that becomes a form of identification. And the reason why I chose this title is because I feel like my work is a celebration of the indigenous being, and that's why I decided that if I'm going to showcase work that is about the indigenous person, then I might as well talk about how we represent ourselves, which is ukuswenka. We call it ukuswenka in Zulu, but that's why you have umswenko. A lot of people can relate to my work because I think when you look at artworks, when you look at jewelry, and different design forms, the language is the same. It's universal, which is design or creativity. So I feel like people will always resonate and be drawn towards my work because I'm also a designer and a creative, and it's just easy for people to relate to that. So what does the body mean to me? I see the body as a vessel that carries our memories, that is a symbol of our lineage, as a people. And for my work, I use the indigenous body as my focal point because, it becomes an archive of history, of, all these memories that each individual, brings into this world. And it's also this vessel that exists within a specific space and time. And it's also like the primary site for adornment and for obviously for jewelry, for the clothes that we wear. So that is what the body is to me. And I think the importance also of the body is that it also reminds us of the fact that we are humans, and we can identify each other through, this very same body that we exist in. My work centers around the indigenous being and the heritage that comes with being indigenous. The reason why heritage is important is for cultural preservation. And as we move with the times, culture doesn't stay the same, it evolves. And so we will see how I've used the rhombus shape, which is, has been repeated and creates a pattern that then forms part of my designs. And that shape is a representation of a motif you find in Zulu beadwork, which is my culture. And then, you'll see different shapes as well, or different body adornments that are from the Ndebele culture and signifiers of the Suri culture. And that again is also just part of me focusing on the indigenous being and cultural preservation, but also taking it to a more, reimagining it into a more modern, space. I do hope that my work improves intercultural understanding, and I hope to do that through, you know, people asking questions about the work itself, and whenever they read about the work, they get to peek into different lives, different cultures, and have maybe a different perspective than what they initially had, if they had any at all, based on the particular culture. So the more that I put the work out, the more people get to experience something different and that's outside of themselves, and that then, you know, helps improve this intercultural understanding, and also just like create relationships where everyone sees that at the heart of it all, we are all humans who have like culture. So I do hope that people in Tallinn who look at my work and come into the gallery to experience the work, you know, gain an understanding that the indigenous being is more than just, you know, the other. We are, you know, people who also are able to express ourselves through art and how we create, and we are also able to adapt and evolve with you know, time. So I do hope that, you know, people in Tallinn can see that through the work, and, you know, find also what then resonates for them just by experiencing the work. I've used technology, 3D printing, and I've mixed it with hand-making jewelry techniques to create the pieces, the jewelry pieces. And I do know that, you know, there's that conflict, or, you know, one might wonder if there's that conflict between 3D printing and handmaking, and what that means, you know, for the work itself. And for me, really, it wasn't really about finding conflict, but it was more of trying to find a synergy between the two. Because I feel like, again, that whole thing of cultures evolving, that the signifier of that in my work is that I mix both, like I mix the modern and, you know, the cultural. And I try and make that into one thing to create works of art. So I wouldn't necessarily see it as conflict. I see it as those two things work together and can work together to create a balance between both worlds. I think the next thing for me is to cement myself as a multidisciplinary artist. So a lot of my work moving forward is always going to be jewelry, you know, art jewelry, mixed with photography, mixed with you know, visual art, and just like, you know, using all of those different art disciplines to create works of art. So it's not going to be one thing. So people should be looking out to see works that are just like very experimental, in the sense that I'm going to be testing out different forms of art. And what is coming up next, I cannot reveal yet. I'm still working on a lot of things that are in the pipeline, and I do hope that if you go on Instagram and you look for Changing Facets, that's where you will see a lot of like the works that is going to be coming up.